actually the case of the Rampart Street murder house in New Orleans. And it is the case of Addie Hall and Zack Bowen. I have heard of this case, actually. Like I said, I love New Orleans. Someday I will actually get to go there. I am all about haunted history, and I read, of course, all of Anne Rice's vampire books. How many times have you guys heard me mention vampires on this channel? So, yeah, I do wish that I had seen it before Hurricane Katrina. But, stuff happens. So, I'm going to jump right in. New Orleans is listed as one of the best travel destinations in the United States. But behind the buzzing streets, friendly locals, and of course, epic Mardi Gras celebrations, lies a dark history that some people may not know about. The old slave auction and the tragic events of Hurricane Katrina leave no doubt that this city could be enveloped with paranormal activity. And one of the most infamous stories in New Orleans centers around the Rampart Street murder house. It's located in the popular tourist stop called the French Quarter, and the house in question happened to be the scene of a grisly crime and the final dwelling place of the ill-fated couple, Addie Hall and Zack Bowen. At first, the story of Addie and Zack begins like any other love story. They meet, they flirt, and they fall in love. They have their ups and their downs, just like any relationship, and ultimately decide to weather the storm together. Zack Bowen was, according to people that knew him, a decent person. There was nothing about him that made people guarded or nervous. He was neither extraordinarily attractive or memorably unattractive. He wasn't mean. He was not the homecoming king. He was just your pretty, average American boy. He had plenty of friends, he was sociable, and clearly hid whatever was dwelling beneath the surface of his mind for the last several years of his life. He was not native to New Orleans, but had been living in the area for an extended period of time before he met Hall. Originally from LA, Zachary was a military veteran who, according to those that knew him, served in both Afghanistan and Iraq before being discharged. Upon his return to the United States, Zack chose to call New Orleans home and opted to leave California behind. In New Orleans, he was hired at several bars because of his looks, his charming manner, and his long blonde hair. But he seemed haunted by his past. In fact, writing in his suicide letter that he had 28 cigarette burns on his body to mark each year of failure in his life, to include school, jobs, the military, marriage, parenthood, morals, and love. A fellow bartender told the New Orleans Times-Picayune that after downing rounds of Miller Lite High Life and Jameson's Irish whiskey, Zack would get depressed when talking about his military service, indicating that there was an overseas incident involving a child that haunted him. Now, I'm going to stray from the story, and I know some of you don't like that, but I've been an active duty military spouse. Granted, we were not married, but we went through 7 years and 5 deployments, and I saw how he changed after each one, and I can only imagine what happens over there. So, himself with drink after drink at the hotel's rooftop bar. Surveillance cameras show him walking to the edge and backing away numerous times as if he had to summon up some courage to throw himself off the edge. In his pocket, investigators found the keys to his apartment, the contact information for his landlord, and a Ziploc bag that contained a disjointed suicide note, which partially read, "I didn't contact any of my family, so that'll explain the shock. This is not accidental. I had to take my own life to pay for the one that I took." And then he talks about the 28 cigarette burns. The note directed police to Zack's apartment, where Zack had spray painted his wife's telephone number on the wall for her to be notified. Another spray painted note directed police to a couple of large pots on the stove. Now, this is where it gets grisly, so if you want to turn it off, that's okay. I've heard worse, and I find this really, really weird, which is why I'm telling you about it. So again, just here's your warning, okay? Click out if it's not your thing. Inside one of the pans, they found the head of Addie Hall, and in another were her hands and her feet. A basting pan inside the oven contained her arms and legs, which had been sprinkled with seasoning, and there were chopped vegetables in a container on top of the stove. The rest of her body was in the fridge. Zack had left details for the police, actually in Addie's journal. He wrote, "Today is Monday, the 16th of October. It is 2 a.m. I killed her at 1 a.m. Thursday, October 5th. I very calmly strangled her. It was quick." His note claimed he had repeatedly had sex with her body. He passed out drunk on the sofa with it, and then the next day when he woke up, moved her to the bathtub and began to dismember her. This guy. Police noted that he had attempted to clean up the bathroom. It took him 4 days to decide of how to dispose of her remains. He turned the thermostat to 60 degrees and went about his normal routine. After her murder, he spent quite a bit of time in the apartment, writing the messages on the walls in spray paint, writing a 5-page note that was found with his body. And when he wasn't there, he was out drinking, getting strippers, and doing drugs with all of his friends. All of this was evidently in an effort to numb the shock of what he had done, as evidenced by what he wrote and eventually did. Next to Addie's dismembered corpse, Zack left another note, further explaining the situation to the police. "I scared myself, not by the action of calmly strangling the woman I've loved for a year and a half, and then by desecrating her body, but the city of New Orleans, the number of residents showing possible signs of mental illness supposedly doubled after Hurricane Katrina. It's not outside of the realm of possibility to assume that both Addie and Zack were part of this 50%. And the assumption becomes even more plausible when you consider the fact that they weathered the storm and witnessed the city at its worst. It's conceivable that Zack had just simply reached the end of his mental limit. A man who returned from war, possibly suffering from PTSD, was suddenly thrown into another horrible situation that would likely heighten any psychological issues that were already present. So in the end, perhaps, Zack just couldn't take it. Maybe not the demons that people claim to live below in the voodoo temple, but the ones that existed inside his own head. The house in which this crime took place is now known as the Rampart Street Murder House, and the voodoo temple has since relocated. To this day, this murder remains one of the most appalling in New Orleans history. A 2014 documentary called Zack and Addie explores the details prior to and following this horrendous event and attempts to arrive at how this could have happened. It's worth noting that in February 2016, the temple was destroyed by an electrical fire, and that's why they relocated. Now, in the wake of these events, those who have either knowingly or unknowingly lived at 826 North Rampart Street have experienced severe paranormal activity, such as feeling as though they're constantly watched. People hear voices, and sometimes feel as though the apartment itself is pressing in on them. Some residents who have lived in and near the house believe that the paranormal had more involvement than the recreational drugs and alcohol. Reports have led to ghostly figures, disembodied, unidentified whispers, and the feelings of dark forces. It is probably one of New Orleans' most haunted locations. So, I know this is going to have some kind of weighed opinions, I guess is the word I'm looking for, but do you think that stuff like that is possible?